I'm Teacher Mike, and this is episode 4 of Ask an American, my new series in which I interview people from the United States so that you can practice listening to English while also learning about the United States and the people of the United States. And today's episode is special not only because we are talking about Washington, D.C., which is the capital of the United States, but also because our guest today is actually my roommate, who I lived with for 3 years while studying at St. Mary's College of Maryland. So, yeah, Glenn, could you please go ahead and just introduce yourself?
I am Glenn. I live in Washington, D.C. Actually, I live right outside of Washington, D.C. in a small town called Chevy Chase, but it's very close. It's a 10-minute walk. I can get into Washington, D.C. 35, I work in a supply chain for a wine retailer, a wine store.
And so, right now, you live in Chevy Chase, but you're originally from and grew up in Washington, D.C., right?
Yes, correct. Washington is a fairly small place, so we go back and forth very often between Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia. Um, it's pretty normal for us. Um, but I grew up in Washington. 2 years ago, I moved to Maryland for the first time. So currently, I'm technically a Marylander.
And so our first question is so our first section is going to be about English and also about any foreign languages that you might speak. So the first question is, do you speak any languages besides English? If so, what languages do you speak? How well do you speak them and why did you learn them?
Okay. English is the language I'm most comfortable in, and it's my best language. I also speak French pretty well. I learned it in school, but I also have a lot of family who speak French, which gave me a lot of opportunity to practice. Which is why I wanted to learn so I could communicate with my family in other places in the world. So my French is pretty good. I studied it from high school age in university. And now, currently, since I work in the wine business, I also use it sometimes for working with French suppliers and things. So I do get a chance to use it here and there. I don't sound like a native speaker. I have a very strong American accent and I make a lot of mistakes, but I'm able to converse very well. My Spanish is pretty good too. I can read and understand it very well. I have some issues speaking because when I want to speak, I end up speaking in French as opposed to Spanish. Um, I just can't get it. I always just, since I turn on my foreign language brain, it goes right to French, not to Spanish. I learned that in school too. But again, because we have a lot of Spanish speakers in our area, it gives me a lot of opportunity to hear it and to become more familiar with it. I also know a little bit of Malagasy, what they speak in Madagascar. Again, because of family, I wanted to learn that. Uh, it's not very good. It's mostly just a few words. So I can't really even speak in full sentences, but I can kind of follow along with a conversation, what people are talking about. Um, I can go to the store and that sort of simple tasks.
Got it. So you said that when you speak French, you definitely have an American accent and you make some mistakes. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like that prevents you from communicating, or do you feel like that's normal? What do you think?
It's definitely normal. I'll say if I am speaking in French for a long time, I start getting tired and of speaking, and I think I start making more mistakes. It becomes harder, and at that point, I do feel bad about it. Before that, though, if I'm speaking with a French speaker, they're always surprised and they always compliment me on how well I'm doing. Um, the mistake I make the most is gender because English doesn't have gender in the language in the same way, and I've pretty much given up. I don't think that's going to be something that I ever learn. Unfortunately, it doesn't come naturally. Maybe I'll get a little bit better, learn some more words, but it's definitely something that is very hard, and I don't I don't know if I'll ever get it right.
Next question. So about English. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good do you think your English grammar is?
I would say about a 9. I know there's still parts of it that don't make total sense to me. I think there's certain, what is it, past participles that sort of thing, where I might get confused on what the correct past participle is. Um, and then there's certain rules that I don't know that it's a rule, but I don't know how important it is. They always say you can't end a sentence in a preposition, but for a natural speaker, you always end a sentence in a preposition. So I don't know. Not perfect, but I'd say pretty good. Pretty good.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how important do you think grammar is when speaking English?
I think it might be less important than some languages. I have a lot of friends who speak German, for example, and I think they are a lot more strict with their grammar. I think English might be more forgiving for mistakes because we can say things in a lot of different ways. And since it's a language that's spoken all over the world, there's a lot of different dialects. So there is a lot of different correct ways of saying things too. So maybe it's not the right grammar for the dialect that you're trying to speak, but maybe it's closer to another dialect. So somebody who's more familiar might be able to understand that. So on a scale to 1 to 10, maybe about a 6, something like that.
Next question. How do you feel when you see or hear other native English speakers make grammar mistakes? Are there any mistakes that bother you versus mistakes that you think are more acceptable?
Yeah, to me, it doesn't bother me too much. A little bit, like I said, I think it's more that it bothers me, but it's more I get impressed when somebody is speaking very perfect. That I think is more impressive, more so than it's bothers me when somebody's not speaking perfect.
Interesting, interesting. So you're saying that if someone uses really perfect grammar and lots of bigger words, you're more likely to notice that. Whereas if someone is not really using correct grammar and doesn't have a great vocabulary, you're not really going to think very much of anything, right?
From time to time, yeah, I would say so. Nowadays, I think a lot of people point to, I think literacy in our country isn't as good as it used to be. And so I think people are making more and more mistakes. Maybe as I get older, that will be something that bothers me more. I can't say. My father, who doesn't speak English as a native speaker, he gets very annoyed when people don't speak English perfectly. But that's because he worked so hard to learn English. When he hears other people make a mistake, especially if it's a native English speaker, he always feels, oh, I learned this. You should know this.
How do you feel when someone who is not a native speaker makes grammar mistakes or pronounces words incorrectly?
We understand that it's hard to speak. I think English speakers think their language is more difficult than it actually is because our spelling can be very strange in English. And so people think, oh, we have a very difficult language. Maybe it's not that difficult, but I think people are pretty accepting when people make mistakes.
So was your first point kind of that we recognize that there are difficult things about our language, such as spelling versus pronunciation can be very different, and there's
Yes.
also lots of exceptions to the
Yes.
rules. So because of that, we are more forgiving when people make mistakes.
Yeah, there's always an exception to the rule. And there are sounds that I know that are hard for people to make, depending on what language you're coming from. And so we understand that.
Okay, last question about language in general. What's something that you would like to say to my followers who are learning English?
I think just to repeat what I said before, English I think is a pretty forgiving language where you can say things in different ways. There are a lot of different ways to express yourself. It's a very flexible language. The way that you put things, it's the people don't get confused that easily. I think compared to sometimes when I'm trying to speaking a different language or I hear other people get confused when you're trying to speak that. I don't think that happens so much in English. Maybe that's also because a lot of Anglophone countries have a lot of people coming from different countries. And so they're used to that. That could be a reason why.
That's a good point. We're very used to hearing different people speak English, so we're used to hearing lots of different Englishes. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so the next set of questions are going to be about Washington, D.C. The first question is can you give us an overview of Washington, D.C.? For example, how big is it? What's it like? And how is it different from other cities, for example, Los Angeles or New York?
Washington, D.C., so it's the capital of the United States of America. It is a pretty small city, I think, in terms of geography. And in terms of population, it's not very large either. It's 800,000 people, 700,000 people, something like that. However, the area around Washington, like I was explaining earlier, I live in Maryland. It's very close to different places. So the metro area is pretty big. 7 million people, something like that, um, which means it's not the biggest in the United States. Smaller than Los Angeles, New York, but it's still one of the major areas in the United States. So the entire area is pretty big.
But let's say we're just focusing on DC. It's like 10 square miles or something, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's smaller than 10 square miles, a little bit smaller than that. It's a city that you can get to know fairly quickly. If you come and visit, you spend a couple weeks here, you can get to know the city pretty well. I would say the difference between New York and LA, because it is a little bit smaller than both. LA is a little bit more spread out. Washington is a little bit more compact, but it's not so dense and compact as New York City. It doesn't have the skyscrapers like New York City. So it's maybe a little bit in between. It feels a little bit in between both of those places.
Okay, and if a foreign tourist is visiting the US, do you recommend visiting DC? Why or why not?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Washington, D.C. is the best place for a tourist to come in the U.S., I think. I think it's much better than New York or L.A., partly because it's easier to get around. The metro, the subway in Washington, it's better public transportation than in LA, definitely. New York has good public transportation, but it gets confusing because it's so big. It's also great because we have so many free museums and monuments and things that are very accessible for tourists. So it's a great place for tourists to come, and they can go museums, see so many famous monuments, learn a lot about the history and the culture and everything about the United States here. It's a great place, a lot more civilized, in my opinion, than New York City or LA can be. I think it's a lot cleaner and safer too, honestly.
And what specific parts of DC do you recommend visiting, and what should people do there? Do you have maybe a top three areas that you would recommend to someone who's only visiting for a day or two?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have three. I mean, really, if you're only there for a day or two, if you go to the mall, the National Mall, it's not like a shopping mall. It's where the monuments and the museums are. It's all centrally located, so they're all very near each other, but it is a very big space. So that could take a whole week exploring every museum and every single monument. So if you're just here for a couple days, if you pick a few favorites there, American History Museum, the African American History Museum, I think those are great to go to the museums during the day. And most of the monuments are open at night. So you can go to the Lincoln Memorial at night, and that's very beautiful. The Martin Luther King Memorial at night, that's very beautiful, to go to do those. And they are all located near each other. So you can spend a lot of time there. If you have some extra time, I do recommend to go out into the city, where people live. I think DuPont Circle is a very easy one because it's easy to get to from the National Mall. And there you can see good restaurants and more the daily life of people. It's got good nightlife. And if you look at a map of Washington, D.C., DuPont Circle in the west side, and then going east, there's Adams Morgan, Logan Circle, Shaw, U Street corridor. Those areas, they're fairly central in DC. They've got a lot of great restaurants, theaters, nightlife, everything. If you want to see what the daily life is in the city, I definitely recommend those areas.
How about food? Are there any foods that are unique to DC?
I would say there's not so much that is very unique to DC. The only thing that is really you can only find in this area and you can't find in other places is a sausage called a half smoke. It's like a spicy hot dog, essentially. I like it a lot. That's pretty much the only super unique thing. Much of the other food is fairly similar to what you get other places. Because we have a lot of immigrant communities, there's a lot of immigrant food, and some things that you go to other cities in the US and you that are less common in other cities that are more common here will be Ethiopian food. There's a lot of Ethiopian restaurants, a lot of Salvadoran restaurants, and Peruvian restaurants. They have those in other places. It's not unique, but they are more common here, I think, than in other places.
And can you think of one or two things that we haven't talked about yet that are either unique about DC or unique about the people of DC?
Again, not unique, but DC is a major city that is kind of in the middle of two major regions since it's almost in the Northeast, so it's similar to some Northeast cities, but it's almost in the South, so it's similar to some Southern cities. So I think it has a little blend of both of those cultures. We have very strong immigrant cultures that have set roots here for many years, many decades, like our Ethiopian culture, and also like Black African American culture is very strong here. One thing that's unique to DC that we haven't mentioned is a style of music called go-go that's popular here. It's a very drum heavy, percussion heavy music. It's a party music, and it's from this area. It's a lot of fun to listen to and to go see a live performance. People get very excited for it.
What can you tell me about accents and how people speak English in DC? For example, is there a unique DC accent, and what are some of the features of that accent, and who is more or less likely to have that accent?
So there is a DC accent, but because again, like I said, we're a city that's in the middle of of a few different regions. We actually have a lot of people speaking different accents in DC, and there's because we're the capital, people are coming from all parts of the world. So you really do get a lot of different accents. The DC accent, the real distinguishing thing about it is I think it's just one vowel sound, really. And that is in standard English where you say the a lot of times in DC, somebody from DC would say it more like So for example, like carry, it's curry. Berry, it's Bury.
And in general, it's probably the DC accent is probably a lot more common in African Americans, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. There also is, I think, so there is a division between the black accent in DC and the white accent in DC. The white accent in DC, I think, is less pronounced, but there is one too. And it's a little bit closer to a Southern accent for people who have grown up several generations. It's a little bit less pronounced though. So when you're really talking about the DC accent, you're talking about a black accent.
Are there any words or phrases that are unique to DC?
So that I think is a lot more where the language in DC stands out. There's a lot of slang words that we use, and I could sit here for 20 minutes trying to list off different slang words. Um, the fun one that a lot of people say is calling each other, like how you say dude or bro or something like that in other places. We say mo, like what's up mo. Joe is another one that we use. Slim, Joe, Mo, Bob. These are all terms that we use that I don't really hear other places. Like, hey, Slim, what's up, Slim? What's up, Joe? What's up, Bob? That's not something you hear in a lot of places, but you do hear that here. To like express disappointment, sometimes we'll just say kill. So kill Mo is a very common, like, stereotypical DC phrase.
Is that kind of like saying like damn, dude?
Exactly. Like, damn, dude, it's kill Mo. Yeah, absolutely.
And our final questions are about the US in general. So, first question is what do you like most about living in the US?
We do make things very convenient here. It's very easy to go out to buy things. You don't wait in long lines. You don't have to really struggle to get served in places. Things happen very quickly, and they're very much about like keeping things efficient compared to some countries. I mean, there's some countries that also might be very fast and very efficient with the way they do things. But I think in compared to most places that I've seen, I think the US is very convenient. Also, Americans are pretty polite, I think, compared to other people. Sometimes there's a reputation of Americans being rude, but I think it's more so that Americans are loud or talkative or they joke a lot. They're not a formal people at all, which personally I like because I'm not a very formal person either.
So, next question is, what do you dislike most about living in the US?
Well, I think one thing I dislike is how reliant we are on cars and how spread out things can be in the U.S. It gets sometimes feels a little bit isolating. You don't really develop close relationships with people as much. I think we're stuck in cars. We get a little bit isolated. Where in other countries, I think people end up living together and uh, rubbing shoulders with each other a little bit more. And I think that we miss out on some things because of that. Yeah.
What does it mean to you to be American, or what makes someone American?
So I don't really know what it means to be an American because we have so much diversity of people. We really accept people of like there's so many different types of Americans. It's hard to say, oh, there's one way, this is what it means to be American. And I will say maybe one thing that is American is to kind of understand that there isn't one right way, that there's so many people who each do their own thing and come from different backgrounds, and pretty much everybody kind of understands that in America, that hey, the way that I do things is not the way that everybody else is going to do things, and we kind of give each other more space to really live their lives the way that they want to.
What is a value, custom, or idea that you think is either unique to the US or just more common in the US?
Yeah, I think what I just said, that we are a little bit more forgiving of differences here. We understand that people are different. I would also say maybe that we are a joking and like a friendly culture in general, even with strangers. You meet a stranger and he might say something to you, and if you're a foreigner, maybe you don't understand what he's saying, but it's not really important. He's just trying to come up with an excuse to laugh with you. Americans like to joke and to laugh a lot. Yeah.
What's something that you think would surprise people who have never been to the US?
So I don't know how much would surprise people because TV and movies, people see a lot of the US. So I think a lot of people have an idea of what's going on here. I'll say sometimes people think we're a little bit more technologically advanced than we are. Um, I've had people, like, I've gotten confused in other countries about how to use some machine or to do something, and they say, "Oh, you're American, you should know. You guys are all have the latest technology," and I don't think that's necessarily true. Um, so that might be the one thing that surprises people. And then coming to Washington in particular, like I said, people are surprised about how green and how many parks and trees and everything that we have here.
And finally, what's one thing that you want people from other countries to know about the U.S.? What message would you like to give the world?
Yeah, I think to continue what I was saying there, we are very open people. We are very accepting. We like to make friends with other people. I know right now there's a political climate where our leaders are saying things that don't sound like that, but that's not really what most people in the United States are like. That's people trying to make political points, trying to get a political reaction more so than what the normal people in the United States are like.